Welcome and everybody to HogvilleNET YouTube Live. It's another fun-filled episode with me, your host, Kevin McPherson. You know it's going to be fun, but you know it's going to be information-filled, especially right now as we keep getting intel just pouring in as Arkansas coaches are on the road now recruiting John Calipari and his merry troops, the really second full recruiting cycle for this coaching staff. It's HogvilleNET YouTube Live. You know, it's where we come to talk about everything Razorbacks basketball. And today will be no exception. So let's get into it. Let's just jump right into some of the stuff that matters when we talk about this recruiting part of it. We'll have more to say at the end, about this team and about this season. But for now, let's continue to stick with the hot topics of recruiting. I'm going to share something here that has been in the works for a couple of weeks at least. We've been talking a lot about Brandon McCoy Jr., the 6'5 guard out of California. Played at St. John Bosco last year. He's transferred to Sierra Canyon. This is a player that has at one point in time, for a while, was rated the number one player in the class of 2026, Brandon McCoy Jr. Good morning. And he's been rated, some services still having ranked as the second best player in the country, or the third. He's top five. I've got him fifth in my top 25 that I did. So a top five, however you slice and dice it, top two or three. But this is one of the more athletic. This guy's got super elite athleticism, good size and length at 6'5". Just one of those players that in the open court and as a slasher in half court offensively is electric. He's one of the top defenders. We talk about Jordan Smith Jr. all the time. I say he's the best two-way player, offense, defense, and he's just elite defensively. You know, there's a case that Brandon McCoy Jr. is in that conversation. I mentioned Caleb Holt, who just visited Arkansas. How good some of these guards are on that side of the ball defensively. And so Brandon McCoy Jr. checks a lot of boxes. Shooting, a perimeter skill, that's a work in progress. And he's a guy that when he starts clicking, it kind of reminds me on the playground of myself in the old days. I really wasn't a shooter. I could score, but I really wasn't a perimeter guy. I mean, I was barely competent, but if I was on a heater, night on the playground, I was a playground hack. But in reality, this guy is one of those guys. I mean, and he didn't play in the spring. Remember this. He was the guy that was hurt, and you didn't see any Nike EYBL performances of him in the first three sessions of four, and those were all played in May. Then he popped up, and he played for Team USA U19 along with Caleb Holt, Jordan Smith Jr., Tyron Stokes. Those four. And the rest of the team of the 12-member team were veteran, older guys going into 2025, going in as freshmen this year, or some that had actually played a freshman college season a year ago. So he was on that team, and he didn't get a lot of run. I mean, he was just really working himself back up. And then you get into mid and late July with the final two weekends of the grassroots season back on Nike EYBL, and he starts going off. John Calipari courtside for everything. So we've been talking about how they're finalizing Arkansas's. It was so quiet for so long, and then Arkansas is working to finalize visit dates for him. So we said that. Well, it got to a point where those were finalized, and we're just waiting. We told you that it was likely, part of the intel we gave as we were talking about the finalizing of the dates was probably going to be in September. And then we looked at the calendar and pointed out the dates where Arkansas already has visitors set up. And at that point, they still had everybody had their own weekend. There wasn't any overlap. And that left open the upcoming September 5th through 7th weekend. We were last on yesterday. We reported that there is a change for now. Erfan Diane with his second change, so third visit date that we've talked about, moving from September 12th through 14th, moving that out to September 19th through 21. So he's moved the date, and it overlaps same weekend that Jordan Smith Jr. is going to visit Arkansas. So we're coming back to Brandon McCoy Jr., but only to say as of yesterday, we said now there are two open September weekends, the 5th through the 7th, the 12th through the 14th. Well, I've been waiting for the young man to put the visit dates out. I've been sitting on it for a few days. Well, more than a few days, but it hasn't come out yet. So I've made a promise not to put it out on Twitter, just like I did with the Diane stuff we talked about yesterday. I announced on the show what his new dates are. I haven't splashed it out on social media on Twitter because that was a promise that I made. So today, we've got a similar situation with how I'm going to handle Brandon McCoy Jr. He is, in fact, expected to come in this coming weekend. So starting tomorrow, today's Thursday, September 4th, the weekend planned visit for Brandon McCoy Jr. to Arkansas is September 5th through the 7th. So at some point, I expect him or to have a Joe Tipton or however, a lot of these young players, it's what they do. They use somebody like that to do a graphic for them, put out either their top schools list, their visit list, their commitments. Once it gets to that, those are the kind of things that the way that players sometimes make their announcement. So we'll see if he uses social media, how he gets that done, if at all. But for now, we'll come here and tell the fan base that Brandon McCoy Jr. is expected. Now, things, even at the last minute, can change. There have been players that didn't go to the airport. I don't see any of that happening. I'm just saying I'm never 100% on anything, right? But here we are basically in the final hour of what to expect for a visit. So that's what we're keeping our eyes on. We expect Brandon McCoy Jr., a top 5 rated, top 2 in some cases, one of the top level guys in the country. You know how John Calipari does it. He rolls fast, furious, and with the best. I call him every time out the greatest recruiter of all time, and this is part of proof of concept. This is another exhibit. If we were at trial defending John Calipari as the greatest recruiter of all time on the high school level, Brandon McCoy Jr. in this 2026 class is one of the exhibits at the top. And you just had Caleb Holt, another top 5 rated 5-star guard on campus this past weekend. And we've still got this upcoming open date. I call it an open date for visits now to possibly bring someone in September 12th to the 14th. I do expect that will happen, but we'll see. There's another candidate or two out there. We also had visit news, by the way, Brandon McCoy Jr. We always make the J.J. Andrews connections when we can because we told J.J. he's going to help recruit, right? And we've been told that. But they did play together a few weeks ago. I think not on the same team, but they were together in Los Angeles for that Nike The Academy. Some of the elite players in the country, they brought them out for that to LA. And then that transitioned into the Mamba League Invitational, 5-on-5, basically a series of all-star games. And Brandon McCoy Jr. took part in some of that. And I think he may have also played earlier in that week at Rucker Park in the Slam Summer Classic. I know he played in at least one of those. I think he played in both. And so they would have been able to interact through the week and hang around each other. There's a photo that's been out there, I think it was from the academy where they're hanging out. They took a photo together. So again, what did we tell you before? The source information was, the intel was, when asked who's JJ helping recruit, I got a one-word response: everyone, everybody. So Brandon McCoy Jr. fits into that, right? He's coming in for a visit. And more visit news that we got yesterday. This was weird how this played out. Got this information early in the day. Well, it's actually, we were talking about this. I have a source on Baba Aladdin, previously class of 2027, number 1 recruit in the country in that class. We were telegraphing back in July, look, the word is on the street is this guy's going to reclass of 26. I put that tweet out. A few weeks later, in fact, he made that announcement. All right, we've known that. And then we've been reporting here for weeks, going back to almost a month ago, that Arkansas was getting close, that Calipari had prioritized him and had been prioritizing him. And we told you the intel was Calipari knew way before it ever went public that he was going to reclass, and he was recruiting him with that in mind at the time, well in advance of when it actually became a thing. And everybody else started talking about it. That was part of the intel. Then we got to the point we said they're finalizing a visit date for Baba Aladdin, 610 Silver Springs, Maryland. Again, was the number 1 player in the previous class, and now I've got him as a top 10 value, maybe top 5. But really a kind of a stretch the floor kind of a guy. As he adds strength and rounds out his game, I see a potential projection for maybe an Evan Mobley. There are other comparisons you can make. Maybe on the NBA level, he's more of a 3-4. Mobley would be more of a stretch 4, can play the 5, maybe. But the idea in college is he'll be a stretch 4. But either way, Aladdin, we said Arkansas was finalizing a visit date. And then I brought in intel that I had one source that was telling me that with Aladdin, he thought that Arkansas had actually set a date. He didn't give me the date at the time, but that a date was probably set. And I said, I've been able to confirm Arkansas is working to finalize it. This source thinks the date's set. Well, that same source gave me the date yesterday, but he said you just have to hold on to it and let the kid announce it because I don't think the dad wants it out yet. Okay, so we had a very busy day at the McPherson Casa yesterday. I was not tied to my phone all day at this time of year, which is murderous for me to have to set it down. We had other stuff going on at the house. I had the exterminator guy out yesterday as we were trying to locate an item in one of my attics that was causing creating a problem around here. And that took a while. So by the time I got through that, and then I had a doctor's appointment coming up real soon after that, I checked my phone, and that same source says, well, it's out now. The visit date's out. So I tweeted it. Once I got through some of the stuff that was pressing for me in my personal life, I got back, touched base with Baba's dad. I'm telling this long, convoluted story to make a point. I got in touch with his dad and said, hey, I know it's out there. Do you want to go ahead and confirm it, on your end? And he's like, we really want to wait until early October. So this is Baba Aladattin's dad telling me, want to wait till early October to officially confirm the dates. Remember, something similar has been going on with Arafan Diani and his guardian, his handler. Diani gives me dates, very specific. The handler's like, yeah, but we're wanting to wait. They're still going to make their announcement, Diani's camp, on Friday. That's supposedly, unless they change the date, when they're going to announce their Arkansas visit date, which we've told you 3 different dates now because in real time as it moves along, they've changed, but we know now the date September 19th to the 21st, unless it changes again since that conversation 2 days ago and we reported it yesterday. Things are constantly fluid and changing in recruiting. So I'll leave that open as a possibility. So back to Aladattin, the dad wants to wait. The date is, I'm going to go ahead and share it with you. This isn't really intel now. I tweeted it yesterday. I haven't talked about it yet because we did our show at 5 a.m. and this was later in the day. I had a dead raccoon in my attic, man, and it just, wow. I'm telling you, nothing like that. I've been here for a long time, more than 2 decades, and I haven't had to deal with something like that. But anyway, Aladattin, the visit dates, the weekend of October 24th to the 26th. That's when the football Hogs are going to host Auburn. So that's a football fan atmosphere weekend. It's an SEC game. That's the date. Now, is it firm or is it tentative? Think about where we are now. We're in early September. I can understand why his dad wants to be, conservative, cautious about this and wait. What he said to me was, let's wait till early October before confirming it, publicly. Well, it was already out. It was already out. And I didn't know where it was out. My source said he saw it out, and the source wouldn't tell me that unless it was. So based on that, I put it out. I didn't have time to do a search. I had too much going on yesterday. But I'll say this, even if it's tentative, I can understand why, because a lot could happen between now and the end of October. And it's why a lot of times you see players, announce their visits the week of, because things change and maybe both parties decide to move in different directions, or they're not 100% sold on the date because of other potential conflicts, and it might move around. And some people want the optics of not, looking schizophrenic by putting out a bunch of different things at different times. Sometimes it just works out that way. So I can understand the dad's position on that. It's already out there, October 24th through 26th. And that's one that made it to Twitter and that I'm not sitting on because that was after the fact, after that it was out there and talking to dad. He initially said he wanted to wait until the week of, and then he said, well, you know what, actually let's circle back to early October and do it then. So it's out there. We'll probably redo it at that point. But Baba Aladattin, man, this guy's got a lot in the bag. He's a really good player. And now 2 more visit dates that coming into the show yesterday at 5 a.m. we weren't talking about. We had talked about Brandon McCoy and lining up with that September 5 through 7 weekend, the one that's upcoming. We were pointing to that and talking about it. I actually put those 2 together, but I never confirmed that, yes, in fact, that's when it's happening, just to keep an eye on it. But we've been waiting on that announcement and it's not there. So I'm going ahead and popping it here. And again, I'm not going to put it on Twitter or other social media. So really, when you look at the grand scheme of things right now, all the players we've been talking about in 26 as priorities, there's 10 of them. That includes J.J. Andrews, committed in May, took his visit back in December of 2024, late December, really ran into New Year's Eve on that visit. So that's one of the 10. And then we start rolling, right? Caleb Holt that was a burst of information, right? A Monday, we get the dates, and then that weekend he's visiting. So that just happened last week. Now it's Brandon McCoy Jr. The announcement's not out there publicly. Supposed to happen this weekend unless something changes, and it starts tomorrow. And then we've known about Erfan Diane for a while. We've talked about it, but we've had to change the dates multiple times. We did that yesterday. That we broke that here, September 19th to the 21st. So that's the next known date right now on the calendar that we have talked about after what we think is going to happen this weekend with Brandon McCoy Jr. And the concert on that 19th to the 21st, again with Deanne, is Jordan Smith Jr. That's his official visit date. That's been set for a while. Then you move on to the next weekend with Tate Kenny, another five-star guard. Jordan Smith Jr., I'll just remind everybody, 6'2" guard out of Fairfax, Virginia, top 5 rated guy. I've got him tied for second with Caleb Holt in my top 25. Right behind Tyron Stokes at number 1, just ahead of J.J. Andrews at number 4. Those are my rankings. So Jordan Smith Jr., now you know more about him if you didn't already. But moving ahead to Tate Kenny the following weekend, September 26th to the 28th. That's Notre Dame, Arkansas football that weekend, fan base, big atmosphere. So you've got that visit. And I'll give you just a little bit of information on Tate Kenny. We talked about the fact that when he had his visits out there and scheduled, some he'd already taken, with the Arkansas one being the last one. And as far as I know, that's still the case. Arkansas is the last one, but he added Kansas late, and Kansas ended up being his first visit, just like the Caleb Holt situation, where he knew about some of his visits upcoming, Kentucky, Alabama, Auburn, and then Arkansas, and then Arkansas actually gets the first visit. Similar with Tate Kenny, the way Kansas got that visit. And I said, keep an eye on Kansas. We haven't been talking about them. It's been Louisville's the leader. Arkansas is probably second, maybe a close second. But keep an eye on Kansas. 2 reasons. It's Kansas, but also it is an Adidas school. And Tate Kenny was a star on the Adidas 3SSB circuit. I've been covering him in person out there on that circuit. Interviewed him, had him talk about, Calipari and his potential visit to the Razorbacks back in May. Splashed that on that Twitter. All those video interviews are out there in memoriam. You can go check them out. But Kansas is an Adidas school. And so, the word on the street is, I think we've talked about it once or twice. Tate Kenny may have already made a decision by the end of September on where he wants to go, and still just may go ahead and take visits. And that there was talk that he's, part of that thinking was maybe he's getting a deal, his deal with Adidas lined up, finalized. It's just not public yet. Some of the stuff, and then Louisville, because that's an Adidas school. Indiana is another one that's been in pursuit. But now Kansas, it seems like if Kansas is not the leader now, just like with Caleb Holt, we're saying if he had to make a decision today, coming out of that visit this weekend, it's Arkansas. We'll see what plays out with his visits. We'll see what NIL movement there is to tilt the scales. We'll see what his other visits bring in addition to NIL purses going up, those kind of things that could change that narrative. But for now, there's an idea that maybe Kansas is leading for Tate Kenny. There's been talk of that's been brewing for a few days, and so we'll keep an eye on it. But we were going through the visits again and how many Arkansas had for this class, going back to J.J. Andrews with the commitment, then moving through to Caleb Holt, then Erfan Diane, Brandon McCoy, this weekend, then Erfan Diane, Jordan Smith Jr., September 19th to the 21st, the 26th to the 28th, Tate Kenny. And then we got Cole Clower in early October, the 3rd through the 5th. It's a bye week for the football team, and that's his visit date. And that's a weekend. So that's a lot of names there. But what are we talking about the last couple of days? Arkansas coaches going out on the road. We've been talking for a couple of weeks. Look, they're not going to wait on guys to get to campus. This recruiting period opens up. It's just like the spring and summer when they hit the road to go to those grassroots events. If the NCAA says you can go, you have to go. And again, Calipari knows the assignment better than anybody. Been on the road. We speculated yesterday the places that would probably be early on his stop list. When Santa goes, does his thing overnight for the kiddies on Christmas Eve, there are places he stops. He has to stop somewhere first, and he moves along. Well, I promise you, when John Calipari goes anywhere, it's like Santa Claus coming to town. That's the analogy I'm using today. It's like a guy bearing gifts, and the players know what the gifts are. This guy can get me to the next level. So where was he going to start with? We were talking about the Florida swing yesterday. I specifically said you've got a bunch of priority targets who you're bringing in or finalizing visits with, and guys like Cole Clower and Chase Foster, who we've been saying for weeks, the 6'8" forward that got a late offer from Arkansas out of Baltimore, Maryland, played for CP3, Team CP3 on the Nike EYBL circuit, got that late offer, and we said immediately when we talked about it, that will be tied to a visit. He's not offering this player, top 40, 6'8" forward, really good player, but you're not getting this late an offer from Calipari unless Arkansas is prioritizing you. That's gone public now that you've got the offer, and that'll be tied to a visit. Then we've told you in recent segments they're finalizing a visit date. I think it's finalized. And I don't think it's any surprise at all that even though Calipari yesterday, the first day of that recruiting period, didn't start in Florida, last night, that's where he landed. And he was landing he was heading toward the Tampa, Bradenton, Florida area, which is where IMG Academy is, which is where both Clower and Foster are teammates. About 180 miles from there, going back east to Fort Lauderdale, which is the Miami area, is where Caleb Holt is at Prolific Prep. So today looks like what we talked about yesterday. Those three players, that trio, we mentioned that he's going to have to hit them early. Well, he is. It's still early. We just started the live recruiting period. Now that it's open, September 3rd, yesterday, Wednesday, runs all the way to April 30th. These stops are the first of many, and Calipari is going to go back and see these same players over and over. Even if it gets to a point where they commit to Arkansas, he's still going to go out and see him, just like he's gone out and seen JJ a ton at every opportunity after JJ committed in mid-May. It just works that way. But for now, today, it looks like the we'll call it not the Bermuda Triangle. We don't want to jinx anything, but he's in Florida, and so it looks like IMG Academy first, based on the plane tracking I did yesterday. So again, that's Cole Clower and Chase Foster at IMG Academy, and then he can move over and see Caleb Holt down at Prolific Prep in Fort Lauderdale. So where did he go yesterday? That was day one. Well, let's circle back to the visit dates for Baba Aladdin. Calipari and Chin Coleman. Chin typically accompanies Cal. He was with Cal the entire weekend in Memphis for the EYBL. If you pay attention to the recruiting, most of the time Chin is with Cal wherever Cal goes, and they were together in these recruiting stops. And so that was the deal yesterday. And they went and saw Jordan Smith Jr., which we've talked about what a priority he's been forever. Duke, Arkansas, Georgetown, depends on who you ask, but mostly folks think it's Duke. A few think it's Georgetown. And I had one source that thought Arkansas's got the momentum there, Calipari, and that might be in the lead there. So we'll see where it goes. Again, you're not going to visit him on day one unless the visit that you have set up with him for September 19th to the 21st is still in good, solid standing. You're not out there to salvage that. For Calipari, it's about continue to show the guy he's a main focus. And you've got him coming in soon, but you're going to go out there. I wouldn't be surprised if Calipari doesn't make more than one trip to see Jordan Smith Jr. before he's able to before his scheduled visit date. Doesn't mean it will happen. He's got other stops in the next 2 weeks, but something tells me it probably will. But Jordan Smith Jr. wasn't even his first stop of the day. It was Baba Aladdin. Got to that early. He and Chin Coleman were there to see Baba. And again, the visit date, started trickling out and eventually made its way to social media. And then I've kind of gone through the explanation of is there a potential that it's tentative, and let's see what all happens in recruiting. Let's see what Arkansas does with other players, like a Mika Murnin, who Arkansas is still recruiting, even though they decided not to send Chin overseas to go see him at Eurobasket, where he's performed really well. We've talked about that. So he's showing well for himself, helping explain why he's a top 10 5-star recruit, but he's similar positionally to a Baba Aladdin, and Arkansas is recruiting him. So again, we went through the dates there. We've talked about now Brandon McCoy, him coming in, expected in this weekend. That starts tomorrow, man. And you've got the football Hogs in town in the 501 here where I reside, taking on Arkansas State in what's a historic game on more than one level, probably, because it could be the last time Arkansas, the Razorbacks, play at War Memorial, let alone the first time ever playing the in-state, team that's had through its history, some success as a 1AA program under Larry Lacewell. Has had some really good teams as an FBS school in seasons. We know that. They've had a high major upset in there and some close games. So there's a lot of attention on that this weekend. But back up on the hill in Fayetteville, you've got this massive visit. Another, these are top 5 rated 5-stars, top players in their class, and players that are projected once they get through high school season this upcoming year and then a year of college. Most of them is projected as lottery picks, as one and dones. So you get, what we're talking about here. And Calipari's moves are exquisite. I think they're splendid. I like the way he started yesterday. There are going to be people that question, why didn't you go see Caleb Holt immediately? Why today are you going to see Caleb Holt after you start with Cole Clower and Chase Foster? Look, there aren't any missteps here. These are all precision calculated moves by Calipari. There's a bunch of factors that go into when you see players and why. And so you just had this great out of the park home run visit with Caleb Holt. Doesn't mean to expect necessarily that that's the first player you're going to be going out to see on day one. It could have been that, but there's a lot of other factors playing into this that aren't a slight toward the guy. It's all about maybe he can't work it. It's not best for him to really spend the time he wants to. And today or tonight or whenever it is, whether it's in-home, a combination of in-home visit, going out to the school, sometimes it's one or the other. We don't know all those details. What we know is that it was picked the way it was because it makes the best sense. And Calipari's not going to make choices in chronology that are going to disrupt the flow of what he's built in each situation with each player. So rest at ease. Don't worry about why and when. That's all going to play out. And we're here to help play it out for you and let you know what's going on. We do it every day. We don't have a crystal ball. We just know how it works. We stay informed. We're in touch with the staff. We got a lot of sources in the trenches that help us out. And it's good stuff all the time. All right, 27 minutes in. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. We remind everybody we went through just about everything in terms of the recruiting. Just real quick, let's hit some other things as I pretend like I'm going to try to get out of here under 30 minutes. Let's see what happens. Midnight Madness, we didn't talk about that. Yesterday we talked schedule, the fact that the Arkansas-Memphis game was formally exhibition charity for St. Jude's. It's a really good thing. And Arkansas is going to be on the road to play Memphis October 27th. The initial date that was floated out there was the 28th. That was always fluid for TV. ESPNU is going to cover that game. It's at 8 o'clock on a Monday night, October 27th. So that's one of Arkansas's charity exhibition games. I didn't mention this. We'll see if we're waiting on the schedule. I thought it might come out yesterday, but maybe it'll be today. But it's finalized. Arkansas's non-conference. We know about 11 of the 13 that have gone public. 2 more games ago. We're still waiting to see if there's a North Little Rock game. Is there another high major opponent? But the exhibition part of it, and I talked about this on the radio. I haven't talked about it on here. If I have, I don't remember doing it. Forgive me. It seems like I'm doing a bunch of stuff lately in terms of juggling a whole bunch of appointments and other stuff in my personal life, and I'm maybe drawing some blanks. But we didn't talk about it. We've been talking about it on radio and elsewhere, and I've been hearing about it. I just don't have it confirmed. And I usually on schedule stuff, if I don't get a second confirmation, I won't talk about it. But I do think the schedule is going to come out soon, and we'll see. But Cincinnati is one of the teams that Arkansas has been looking at for the home exhibition game. So again, I can't remember all the platforms I've brought it up. I've already brought it up here. Forgive me if not. Now I have. So we'll see once the schedule comes out if Cincinnati is actually one of the exhibition games. Then we've got, remember last year, Arkansas, the whole thing got put together late. They did those 2 roadshow events, glorified practices for fans on back-to-back days on a weekend, a Saturday in Hot Springs, a Sunday in Pine Bluff. I was there for both, covered both. Now they're talking about bringing back Midnight Madness. That's been in the whisper circles for weeks. Calipari mentioned it when he was in Memphis doing that press conference with Penny Hardaway yesterday. Let's keep an eye on that. I used to go to those back in the day when it was Nolan, and they were out of the park. That's back when Arkansas was arguably the best basketball program in the country. They certainly were year in and year out for a stretch there, for about a 6 or 7 season stretch, top 3. There's no doubt about that, maybe the best. And then we're waiting to see, is the media actually going to be invited back later this month to practice? Calipari mentioned that when we went in early July. All right, we are rolling over 30 minutes. Thank you for joining me here on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. I just kind of quick hit through some of the things we're looking at here when the schedule comes out. Is there going to be a Midnight Madness? Is there an exhibition home game against Cincinnati? We know they're going to have one against somebody. Is it Cincinnati? Are they going to do a traditional red-white they didn't do last year? They did the road show stuff. Will they throw one of those in? Things we're constantly thinking about, and now we might get some answers. And the other thing is, one last thing before we leave, we have not seen a lot of video or photos come through from practice. We know that, and they've been back for a couple of weeks. We got the initial 2 photos from Calipari on the court with the players, and we were freaked out by the 2 footers, Paulo Samito and Elmer Zavich, and just how they put into perspective other giant humans, how they weren't so giant relative to those 2 giants. They were bigger giants, right? And you had the wingspan photo. Well, we've just been sitting in idle, waiting for the next thing to drop. Who's going to do it? Come on, Cal. I mean, you've got 1.5 million viewers. Get us some content, man. You got off to a great start once you got back to campus with those 2 photos. Well, we haven't had anything, nothing video wise or anything from practice. But what we did get yesterday, I think it was Hogs Plus, sort of one of the promotion arms of the university. They're not an independent social media group. I don't think they are anyway. That's Hogs Plus, and they have more access to players and coaches and interviews and stories, and they're in the building at all times. They're a branch of the university effectively. But they put out 4 photos. We got 4 photos. The first one, top corner left, was Carter Knox. Looks like he was, about to do things to the rim that poor little rim had never had done to it before. Just gonna murk it, tear it down, whatever. And he had a look on his face like he hated the rim, poor rim. And then you had a couple of Nick Pringle shots in there, which I liked as well. Nick Pringle, the wily veteran in the front line, at the 5 spot, has played a lot of games and a lot of seasons in the SEC between Alabama and last year South Carolina. So had a couple of photos of him also attacking the rim. You had a Billy Richmond dunk photo in there. You also had just a one. We've seen this before of Darius Acuff on the ball, maybe driving and getting to the paint, and DJ Wagner guarding him with Nick Pringle setting a screen. That was one of the photos that Pringle was in, one of the 2. The other one he's dunking. And so, the whole idea is when you see photos like that, we're not talking about this team as a 3-point shooting team as one of its superpowers, right? And so you don't see any photos of a guy out behind the arc getting into some sweet stroke and you're like, oh, I bet that went in. No photos like that. It was all around the rim or around the paint, and that's going to be the wheelhouse and strength of this team. So I don't know that it was intentionally put together because that's true. I just know it's true. And I find it interesting that, you know what? That's probably the pulse of this team. These kind of photos of what we're looking at is probably going to be sort of the identity of this team, at least offensively, is attack that rim. Make teams choose. You've got elite players in terms of getting downhill, and you got a lot of them. So engage them doing that. Now you're going to have to get guys playing off dribble handoffs and other forms of 2-man action and get your ball moving inside out. Yes, continue to get those paint attacks, paint touches, then kick out. You got to have more than just always go to the rim or a lob to the rim. But that's going to be one of Arkansas's superpowers. And the photos helped tell the story yesterday. And so thematic, dramatic, I don't know. It was just cool to get them. All right, we'll get out of here under 35 minutes. One more time, thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. I've been Kevin McPherson. We've got a long day to go. If we get a commitment or some other announcement, we broke news for you today, gave you some intel. Now you know another official visit date, even though we've been talking about it and marrying it up with this weekend with Brandon McCoy Jr. I'm now formally saying that's it. And so that's kind of been the headline. And then the Baba Aladat visit dates expected to be the last weekend of October when the football Hogs are hosting Auburn. Looks like this could end up being an incredible class. Of course, we've said this all along. Arkansas hasn't necessarily been the leader for anybody. You have a source here and there that thinks they are, but for each player, there's been more voices saying maybe it's somebody else. But at the end of the day, it's John Calipari. and he's bringing in 4 top-level guards, 4 top-level bigs, whatever the combinations are. Right now, it's 10 priority guys that have either visited in terms of J.J. Andrews, Caleb Holt, and then a few others that we know are upcoming. And in the case of Chase Foster, that's the one, and Abdou Toure, whose name I didn't mention. I've left him out when I went through the list earlier. Chuck Martin was out to see him yesterday. I can't believe I left this part out. Chuck Martin, assistant coach, was out to see made 2 stops yesterday. Whew, I'm glad I talked through that before I jumped off of here. I'm still half asleep. Out to see Abdou Toure. We know he's been a priority target. We know he took the unofficial visit back in October of last year. We know that he's got an official visit not only being finalized, it got past that, it's finalized. I know the dates, just waiting for him to put them out. And Chuck Martin out to see him at Notre Dame High School at West Haven, Connecticut yesterday. And this is the interesting thing. We've been saying the whole time that Arkansas is either the leader or it's a co-lead or they're right there with UConn, and that there's been a lot of scuttlebutt, a lot of folks that to me don't seem very dialed in saying, yeah, UConn, Danny Hurley, they've moved on. They've moved on. They've cooled. They've prioritized other guys. They want to put their NIL money somewhere else. And I said, I said, no. And I said, I could promise you, this is exact words, Arkansas staff takes it very seriously, and they see him as the top contender. UConn, Danny Hurley. So Chuck Martin out to see Abdou Toure yesterday. So was Danny Hurley. And what's interesting is last night, Toure on his IG account put a graphic out. And it was a photo with him and Chuck Martin standing in front of his Gatorade Player of the Year for the state of Connecticut from last year by that banner. So they took a pose and took a photo there. And right beside it, right next to it, he's with Dan Hurley, and Hurley had been in to see him that day. And I think Tipton had tweeted out the fact that, both, that those were 2 of the programs that had come in to see him. You do not, even though it's across, whatever, 100 miles away, whatever far it is, 45 minutes, an hour away. If you're Dan Hurley and you're not prioritizing that player on day 1 of going out, being able to go out and see players, you're not going into his gym. It's never worked that way around in Arkansas. If Arkansas is not recruiting a player, no matter if they're ranked in the top 50, they're not showing up on day 1 and making a big presence on their campus unless they're a priority. We've said all along, UConn's in it. It may be that they have a pecking order, and a guy like Cole Clower, who we've heard, maybe they're number 1 on their board in terms of that small forward wing position. They're different kind of players. There's no reason why you couldn't recruit both of them. And I said, Dan Hurley operates in mysterious ways. Don't count on some notion that he's not recruiting Abdou Toure. Boom, he was there. So shut that down. Now we'll see where it goes. Things, again, change all the time in recruiting, but a lot of the previous talking points up until yesterday where UConn's not really after him. And you just don't show up for a photo op if you're Dan Hurley, unless that's not true. That's not true. And it hasn't been true. Earlier in the day, yesterday, Chuck Martin up to Archbishop Stepanak. Yes, that's where Florida Gator guard Boogie Fland played his high school ball. Martin was there on April 30th of last year. What do we say? This recruiting period starts in early September, September 3rd this year. Last year, that Wednesday fell on September 4th. So it ran all the way to April 30th. Well, Martin was there on April 30th, the final day that you could to go out and see players during that live recruiting period last year. So he was at Stepanak to see the Ratliff twins we talked a lot about, Darius and Adonis. Top 100 rated 4 stars in the 6'10" to 7 foot range. One's a little taller, 6'11", 7 foot's how they're listed. But again, they're both ranked inside the top 100 in the class of 2026. They're both 4 stars at the Nike EYBL sessions in Memphis. When they did not perform in the games. They were in street clothes. They played in some of them, but the ones that I just happened to be courtside for, they were with their team, but they didn't participate. But on the first day of this recruiting period this year, Chuck Martin out to see them. So it was bookended, right? Last year, the final day, April 30th. This time, the first day, which was yesterday, September 3rd, Chuck Martin at Stepanak to check in on the Ratliffs. Talked to the staff at Stepanak, and Arkansas still has not extended an offer to the Ratliff twins, but that we'll see if anything changes there. This, not the first time that an Arkansas coaching staff member has been out to see them. All right, paying attention to the Florida guys today with Calipari. Where else is Chuck Martin and some of the other staffers going? Where are they going? I want to squeeze out of here before 40 minutes. Boy, I'm a big liar, and I had to double back and clean up some stuff. Thanks for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. Be good, be safe. We appreciate all of you. See you soon.